opinions expressed on the Jay Thomas Show are the opinions of the host, participating callers, and/or listener emails, texts, and/or letters, and are not necessarily the opinions of WDAY or Forum Communications. WDAY 970 AM and 93.1 FM invites you to make your opinion known. We pride ourselves on exploring all viewpoints on any topic.
Do you know who I am? I don't know how to put this, but it's kind of a big deal. People know me.
I'm very happy for you.
All those faithful Jay Thomas listeners, and this isn't the voice of the fabulous Jay Thomas. It's the voice of Ray. Ray Qualvog here with my co-host Fred Danke, produced by Kyle. Kyle's back with his Twins baseball cap on. Good to see for those first-place Minnesota Twins. Although, I must say, it doesn't look good for Twins, considering the juggernaut called the New York Yankees looks like they will displace them and have overtaken them in the American League. You say what, Fred?
Well, that's if the Yankees can hold together. Their big crew, Judge and Stanton, they both were on the injured reserve list. Stanton just got off, was running the bases, and tore up his knee, so he's going to be out for a while.
Well, we'll get onto this later in the show, but I call baseball players babies, and there's a big reason why, and you just hit on it. They're always hurt. But that'll be for another time. But the Twins, I had all these high hopes, and I see the Yankees coming, so it looks like they could be derailed. But anyways, folks, thanks for listening. I think we've got a good show today. I say that all the time because it's usually true. Sometimes it's a flop. But anyways, we will start out the show as Jay typically does. Right? Is it all the time, Kyle, on Mondays? Do we have big Rob Port on usually?
Usually we have Rob Port on, on Mondays.
Okay, so we've got him on standby. He's going to come on. We'll have Rob on for the first half hour. Then we'll get into the show. We're going to talk some politics. We're going to talk some food, of all things. And I'm going to try to get on Mr. Clemens probably in the 4 o'clock hour to talk a little bit about this E15 ethanol deal that's now upon us, which is a good thing, and kind of what's going on out in farm country. So, Kyle, how does this work? We're gonna tune
He's ready
in.
to go. He's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rob, are you there?
I'm here.
Rob, good to talk to you. I don't think I've ever talked to you. Thanks for being on air.
He's also a Yankees fan, so I just want to throw that out there.
Wow. Well,
like Die Hard. Like I may or may not have a Yankees themed tattoo. I'll just put it that way.
Well, I think you got the upper hand on us Minnesota Twins guys right now. So I'm.
We usually do. I don't know.
Are you a Knicks fan in basketball too?
No, I'm honestly baseball's my thing. I grew up in Alaska, so we didn't really have a regional team. I guess the Mariners, but when they're like 1,000 miles away, it kind of doesn't. It's hard to call that your regional team. So I don't know. I've liked the Yankees since I was a little kid, and I got lucky enough when I was 16 was the year Derek Jeter and we won the World Series 1996. And I got to grow up my teen years with that whole dynasty, and still rooting for him today. And this year, it seems like we can't make a bad move. We had at one point, I think the only two players still from our opening day roster that were uninjured were Gleyber Torres and our first baseman Luke Voit, and yet still we're rolling along. The only thing I'm worried about is our starting pitching. I don't know if we can hold out there.
Well, I don't think you have to worry too much about your starting pitching when you can. What did the Yankees score in London? Runs. What did they put up? About 30 plus against Red Sox.
The two games, yeah, we were scoring. But the problem is, do you want to make your offense run a foot race against the other team's offense every game? I don't know that that's a sustainable way to win games. But what do I know? We've been winning games all year, despite just making it work. All of a sudden we pick up Gio Urshela from the Cleveland Indians. He turns into a rock star. We're calling people up from the minors. Domingo Germán, before he too got injured, replaced Luis Severino. He's been playing out of his mind. It just seems like we can't miss this year.
What's the guy from Seattle that you picked up? The DA?
James Paxton, who spent some time on the IL, still got a creaky knee. But that's always been the knock on him, is he has been, basically injured, off and on his whole career. When he's on, though, when he's healthy, he's probably one of the best pitchers in the game.
Well, it's going to be fun to see what happens because even though I'm nervous, I think it's going to be Yankees Twins for the American League pennant, and then we'll see what happens.
And we know how that goes historically.
Yes, not good. Not well for Minnesota fans.
Listen, I love the Minnesota Twins. I think the problem is they have such a that American League Central is just not a very competitive division. And honestly, I think the Twins could be a better team if they had a little more competition.
Well, that might be true, and there's already talk about that these teams play. I don't like baseball the way it's set up, where I think you're required in your division to play 19 games against each opponent.
Yeah.
I think it should be more spread out so you got a better feel for really how good or how terrible you are. I don't like the Twins having to play the White Sox and the Royals 19 times each. I mean, I just think that's ridiculous, but that's the way they got it set up.
They're trying to create like interdivisional rivalries, and they want, like, especially down the stretch, if it's like the Yankees and the Rays and the AL East duking it out to win the division, it's nice if they play each other a whole bunch of times, right? I mean, that generates interest, but I get it. The Yankees too. Everybody wants the Yankees to come and visit because Yankees fans are everywhere. So everybody wants the Yankees to come play at their stadium. So I understand everybody wants to get the Yankees out of the AL East division and tour in the country, but
yeah, it's big money. It always boils down to money. Rob, I got to ask you another question since you said you're from Alaska.
Yes.
Did you see the news? What's going on with the crime rate in Alaska? It's ridiculous. It's the most domestic violence and et cetera, than any other place in the United States. What in the heck is going on in Alaska? Are people just running out of control because they're so far away?
Well,
what's going on?
I haven't lived in Alaska in a long time. I can tell you, Alaska is a very rural state and also a very spread out state. A lot of the communities in Alaska you can't even reach by road. I mean, and that's, if you read the reports, that's what they're talking about. Is it's rural Alaska where the problem is, and it's hard to. I mean, think about it. If you're a state with a population roughly the size of North Dakota, but a geographical space that you have to govern that's multiples of the state of North Dakota. You have places where roads don't reach, and so everything has to be done like by plane or boat. You can't even drive from mainland Alaska to the state capital without like going through Canada or taking a boat. So it's a weird place like that. I think what's going on is it's very, very difficult to get back into some of these communities. North Dakota, our license plates up there say the last frontier. And they're not joking around. There are parts of Alaska that have always been wild. I suspect a lot of what's happening, it might be one of those effects that they're trying to enforce more in the rural parts of the state, and that's generating more that's generating more arrests, and it's shining my feeling is they're shining a spotlight on something that's been true for a long, long time.
Yeah, good point. It's interesting too because that while this is happening in the last, is it safe to say, last 5, 6, 7 years, what on television has had what area has had the most reality TV shows? It's got to be Alaska.
It is. Yeah. The cop shows, highway patrol,
you got
wardens.
the Kilchers, you got the Browns, you've got Todd Hoffman and Gold Rush.
That's my favorite. I like Parker Schnabel. I like Parker.
But you just like him now because he's rich.
That guy gets it done. Well, no, I like it because he's a kid and he just gets it done, man. What a work ethic. I like that a lot.
I don't like him. He's too crabby for me.
Too crabby for you? All right.
Oh, man, he's crabby. Well. All right, Robster, you've got, for folks that don't know, Mr. Port, smart guy, used to co-host or host a show here.
I did, yeah.
On the radio show, and he's got his blog. It's anything. What is it?
SayAnythingBlog.com. Yeah. Been since 2003. Yeah.
There you go. Very popular. He does well with it. So speaking of that, what's on the blog? Let's go through some of the things that are out there now that's on your that's might be on the blog that you think is germane. And did I see something? Rob, was that you that had something? And I'm so computer illiterate, but you had something regarding what Kelly Armstrong said regarding Elizabeth Warren was maybe the top contender against Trump. Did I read that right?
You did. You can actually listen to that. You can listen. I interview Congressman Armstrong pretty much every week. He comes on my podcast, Plain Talk, which you can listen to at sayanythingblog.com. And yeah, he that was his take, is that he really feels Elizabeth Warren has the sort of economic message that a lot of Americans want to hear right now. So that was sort of, because I asked both him and Senator Kramer that when I had them on last week. Senator Kramer, his feeling was that Joe Biden was going to be the biggest challenger to Donald Trump. Kelly felt it was Elizabeth Warren who could really give Trump a run for his money.
Wow, the queen herself. I don't think so.
Yeah.
If I'm picking, I'd say it's going to be somebody other than, just for the simple reason it's too obvious. Usually the obvious ones don't get it. It's kind of like Trump you dial back to way before, there was nobody saying that he had a shot. So I think it's going to be somebody that we don't think is going to be it.
It's interesting because they're all competing with one another, and it's all variations on the same theme, which is that ordinary Americans are down. It's all populism. We're a very populist age. I think a lot of that has to do with social media. It's a very, very populist time. Donald Trump is a populist. Elizabeth Warren is a populist. Joe Biden is a populist. And so it's all the same theme, but just slightly different messages. It's amazing. Sometimes I wonder if you took snippets of transcripts of speeches that these candidates gave and asked people to identify which one came from which candidate, I think people would have a hard time telling which is which.
You wouldn't know. I totally agree. Okay, Rob, you know this thing goes. When you hear the music, we got to take a break.
Yes.
We'll be back with more of Mr. Port right after a quick timeout.
ZZ Top.
That's the music. ZZ Top. Fred, you always are on top of the music stuff, the bumper music. All right, we're back. We're back with the Jay Thomas Show. Ray in for Jay. Jay out for the week, a long 4th of July weekend. 293-9000 is the call number. Or talk at WDAY. I guess you can type that in. You can email or text or however that works, and you'll get through. You'll get through to Kyle, the gut man with the Twins cap on over there.
That's right.
Yeah, he's running the show. But I got to say this, listeners and Rob, is Kyle was actually jealous. He wanted to switch hats with me because I walk in with my Trump 2020 cap, and Kyle is just deflated. Where's my cap, he asks. We'll have to get him one.
I think I'd rather wear a Yankees hat.
Don't talk like that. That's blasphemy. Don't even talk like that on air. I'm going to talk to Capel. Stuff like that, it gets to get you thrown off the air. That's horrible. All right.
Could have a Cubs hat.
Yeah, Cubbies ain't going to get it done.
Also, I don't understand why we're using the winningest team in baseball history as a pejorative here. I don't think that's very fair.
Well, I tell you what, it's a lot happens in this studio when I come on, and including when I come in, and I got to tell you, Rob, what's nice when I come in, Fox News is on. I've got a nice Donald Trump president sticker right donned in front of me. I mean, the whole studio changes when I walk in here. And Kyle, I appreciate that. That's awfully nice of you. I'm glad you have converted to the Trumpster.
I keep it that way for you, Ray.
Yeah, it is nice. You make the surroundings more accommodating. All right. Hey, Rob, the thing today, and maybe I don't know how dialed in you are on this, but is the marijuana thing has come back up.
Actually, I'm very dialed in. I wrote a blog post about it today, and actually interviewed Legalize ND Chairman David Owen for tomorrow's podcast. So
awesome.
This is very timely. I think Legalize ND is doing the obvious thing. The news today is that they released they released details about what their measure is probably going to look like. It's got a long laundry list of restrictions. And I'll tell you, it makes the libertarian in me cringe a little bit, but I think that's probably what North Dakota wants. I very much believe we need to legalize marijuana, recreational marijuana. I think it's ridiculous. I think a lot of the problems we saw during alcohol prohibition are analogous to what's happening with ongoing marijuana prohibition. I think there's room in our society where people can use this drug responsibly, and we need to bring it in and regulate it. I realize it's a little bit of the Wild West time, but over time, I think this is the right decision. And so their new measure has a lot of restrictions on, there's a possession limit. You can't have over like two ounces. You can't be driving around smoking a doob. So it's basically sort of an open container law, but applies to marijuana. You can't be inebriated from marijuana and driving. If your employer has a zero tolerance drug policy, that's still enforceable. So if your employer says we don't want you stoned or using marijuana, you can't. This law doesn't change that. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot more restrictions. The one interesting thing I saw is that they are going to continue to push for expungement. Now, I think that was a big problem with Measure 3. I think a lot of people got stuck on it. The expungement provision in the 2018 measure would have essentially gone back and allowed people convicted of infractions that would have been illegal had Measure 3 passed. They would be able to go back and get their court records expunged. When I talked to David earlier this year, he said that was not going to be part of this measure, but they're saying it is now. And I'm wondering if that's not going to be another complicating factor for voters. Because while I think there is an appetite out there for legalizing marijuana, I think that appetite is a lot more tempered when you start talking about letting people off the hook for having broken the law in the past. Now, I don't necessarily endorse that point of view, but I think a lot of North Dakota voters feel that way, and I wonder if they're not making a mistake there.
Boy, yeah, I'd have to go. I guess I would have to side with the fact that you can't go backwards. If it was against the law, you violated the law, the record should stand. But that would be my feeling. But I what you're saying is that might complicate things and make it tougher for this to pass. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, it's this weird paradoxical things. The politics of initiated measures, there's two knocks on them. Either they're very broad questions, in which case people say, oh, well, it's too vague or it's too broad, or they get really, really specific and really, really bureaucratic, in which case then you start running into all sorts of unintended consequences saying, well, if we pass this, it's going to trigger this law or it's going to conflict with this federal policy. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you keep it vague and say legislature, implement it, we're just basically going to ask the question, which I think the 2018 version of the marijuana measure was, people say, well, it's too vague. But then if you get super specific, it's super bureaucratic. Well, then it's a bigger target and people can find more things to criticize about it. So it's for ballot measures, I think it's really about finding that sweet spot between not being too vague, but not being overbearing either. And I think they're striving to find that balance, and I guess time will tell whether or not they've achieved it.
Well, I think you made a good point, and I totally agree with this. I think you regulate it just like you regulate consumption of alcohol.
Sure.
It's legal to consume alcohol, but you got to have some rules surrounding it. And I think if you do the same with this, it would make logical sense, and you can create some revenue out of it, which obviously would be a positive, and I don't know how anybody could be against that. And I'm a guy that doesn't do anything. I'm the boring guy, Rob. I don't smoke, drink. I don't do anything.
Yeah,
but I just think the hypocrisy of it all is that if you're going to allow alcohol in this country, which we have for years, there's no reason you shouldn't allow marijuana. Because if I had to make a choice between the two, I think alcohol causes much more problems than smoking tobacco or smoking marijuana or however you ingest marijuana. I think alcohol is a bigger problem. That's my personal opinion. I've said it before on this show many times. I don't know anybody, we're always against the people that are smoking cigarettes. Gee, it does this. But I don't know anybody that goes to jail for abusing their spouse because they smoke too many cigarettes or gets pulled over on the side of the road and the cop says, come out and walk the line because you've been smoking a pack of Marlboros all day. Doesn't happen. So I don't know. That's my feeling. Hey, something, Rob, and it's interesting. We're talking about this because I'm going to Colorado in a couple days. I'm wondering, the states that are like Colorado that have embraced the use of marijuana, are you up to speed on any of those places like that? And how is that going for a state such as Colorado?
Well, of course, it depends on who you ask.
Okay.
I think if you remember last year, Colorado, it was odd. If you followed the debate over Measure 3 in North Dakota last year, somehow Colorado managed to become both emblematic of how to do it right and also an example of everything that could possibly go wrong. Like both sides were using Colorado as an example of we should legalize marijuana and we absolutely should not legalize marijuana. I just read an article, I think it was in the New York Times, and what's going on in Colorado is it's been a while. I mean, we're starting to see what the actual sort of social ramifications are, and it's a mixed bag. It doesn't have a lot of the good that I think some of the marijuana enthusiasts said it would. In fact, there was just a study released saying that legalizing marijuana doesn't necessarily reduce opiate use the way some proponents claim it will. So I think it's a mixed bag. I mean, there's no question that marijuana is an inebriating substance, and there's no question that some people are going to use it irresponsibly. But to me, I think you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And also, I think sometimes using a place like Colorado or even some of these other early adopter states, using them as an example or using their experiences immediately after legalizing the drug, I don't know that that's a fair comparison, because anytime you take something that was taboo and it was illegal and you make it legal, you're going to have a sort of land rush of people trying it. And you're going to have sort of a struggle with people saying, well, how does this fit into our society as a city, as a county, as whatever? How are we going to regulate this locally? There's an adjustment period. I think Colorado's
but it's
been
like
going through
it's
that.
like in anything, Rob. You have to try it and get into it, and then you have to kind of people have to you figure some things out after the fact. Hey, Rob, can you take a call? I think we got it.
Absolutely.
Okay, Kyle, can you punch up AJ? You're up with Mr. Port. What do you got?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Good. I'm a 22-year-old millennial. I drive for Uber and tow truck, and I get a lot of opportunities to reach out and contact different people and talk with people. And I was driving a guy down to Henning the other day, and he was an older gentleman. He said, if I'm paying for my medications, you guys better too. You might as well legalize it. And I was thinking, just think about how much the farmers would really prosper off of that as well around here. So just my thoughts.
All right, appreciate the comment, AJ. Rob, what do you say?
Well, one thing in the Measure 3 is, or this one in the new measure that they're going to have, there are restrictions on growing for personal use. So you wouldn't be able to just have your own pot plants,
garden,
in the basement or in the backyard or whatever. It would have to be through some sort of a regulated commercial venture. So I think, to the caller's point, I think that would be very good to farmers because, essentially to grow a marijuana crop, you would have to be in that program and then sell your crop to a, regulated, recognized, licensed distributor to do all of that. And I think he's right. I think that could be very good for farmers. It could be very lucrative, and also would avoid some of the problem that like the vaping companies have had, right? Where that's been a little bit of the Wild West, and like nicotine content levels vary wildly from vape product to vape product, and there's really no sort of standardized systems that people buying it understand what they're getting. Marijuana, I think, very much could benefit from that. So again, while it makes my inner libertarian cringe a little bit, I think there are some benefits for our economy and society to doing it that way. Agreed.
All right, Rob, that's it. It's your half hour's up.
Oh,
you
man.
All right with
That's all I got. No, I'm good. It was a pleasure, Ray. And anytime I get to talk about baseball a little bit, it's fun.
You're a good man, Mr. Port. Thanks so much for being on, and we'll talk to you again sometime. Thank you. All right, we'll be back. You got it. We'll be back with more of the Jay Thomas Show right after the bottom of the hour.